start by addressing the situation that's unfolding south of the border, which is also having an impact here at home. For far too many Canadians, the images and stories coming out of the U.S. are all too familiar. As a country, we can't pretend that racism doesn't exist here. Anti-Black racism is real. Unconscious bias is real. And systemic discrimination is real, and they happen here in Canada. Over the weekend, we saw thousands of people gather across the country to join peaceful protests against anti-Black racism. By standing together and denouncing the few who would try to derail these demonstrations, Canadians are sending the message that they will never tolerate injustice. To young Black Canadians, I hear you when you say you are anxious and angry, when you say that this brings back painful experiences of racism that you've faced. I want you to know that I'm listening and that your government will always stand with you. Together, we will keep taking meaningful action to fight racism and discrimination in every form. The status quo, where people face violence because of the color of their skin, is unacceptable. No parent should have to once again explain to their kids that they or their friends might face racism. It is time, it is past time for this to change. As leaders and allies, we must do the hard work needed to listen and learn. We must ensure that everyone is safe and respected. That includes journalists, who need to be able to do their work on the front lines to expose the truth and tell the stories we need to hear. And we must, as Canadians, always keep working together to build a fairer, better, more equitable country for all.
For far too many Canadians, what is happening on the other side of the border at this time is familiar to them. Anti-Black racism, systemic discrimination, injustice, they are also present in our country. Over the weekend, we saw thousands of people right across the country demonstrating peacefully to stand up against racism by forming a common front and denouncing those who always try to disrupt these demonstrations. Canadians are sending the message that they will not tolerate injustice. So now I would like to speak directly to young Black Canadians. I hear you. I hear your concern, your anger, your pain. I hear you when you say that this brings back painful experiences of racism and discrimination. I'm listening to you, and our government is there for you. And we are taking action to combat racism and hate in all its forms. The status quo, where young people face violence because of the color of their skin, is unacceptable. No parent should have to once again explain to their children that they or their friends could face racism. As leaders and allies, we have to ensure that everyone is safe and treated with respect. Of course, that includes journalists, who must be able to do their work on the ground to expose the truth and tell the stories that we have to hear. And as Canadians, we must continue to build a better country, a more equal and fairer country for all.
It has been a very difficult spring for many people. And although the path forward won't be easy, things will get better. Over the last month, we've started to see promising signs that the curve is flattening in Canada. Now, the situation remains very serious, but the more we can control the spread of the virus, the more we can begin restarting. In many parts of the country, this is already happening. In others, where the situation remains more uncertain, steps are being taken more slowly. Every province and territory will have its own approach. But as we move forward with restarting the economy, we must keep working together. On Thursday, As part of our weekly call, I spoke to the premiers about collaboration on the path ahead. I'm working closely with them, just like with mayors and other leaders, on what this approach should include, because there are a whole range of issues that will require us to take action together. As I've said before, to keep Canadians safe, to give businesses the confidence to reopen their doors and people the confidence to walk through those doors, we need to cooperate on countrywide testing and contact tracing. And on this front, we're making good progress. At the same time, our government is ready to be a partner for the provinces and territories in supporting vulnerable people, securing personal protective equipment, and working on childcare, to name a few. In other words, we're ready to be a partner in a safe, effective restart of the economy. And today, we're demonstrating a first step forward with support for municipalities as they face a cash crunch. From testing clinics to programs for seniors, cities and towns provide essential services. So it's crucial that they have the resources they need. In response to COVID-19, we will make available $2.2 billion for municipalities in the coming weeks through their yearly federal support with the Gas Tax Fund. Normally, municipalities receive these payments in 2 installments, but we know that cities and towns need this money right away as they deal with COVID-19. That's why we're making the full 2020-21 payment available now. Minister McKenna has sent letters to all of her provincial and territorial counterparts to outline how this accelerated process will work. But here's the bottom line. This is strong support to keep Canadians safe and our communities strong. And it's support that will give businesses the confidence to reopen, getting hardworking Canadians back on the job. This is a start. We know there's more to be done to support municipalities and to support the entire reopening process. In the days and weeks to come, we'll keep working with the provinces and territories on this and on a whole range of other measures. Plus que jamais, il va falloir
More than ever, we will have to work together to restart our economy. Our government will therefore continue to collaborate with its partners to weather this crisis, particularly when it comes to contact tracing and testing. We are also prepared to help the provinces and territories protect vulnerable individuals, secure more PPE, and to focus on issues such as childcare. We are ready to work together to ensure that the recovery can be a safe one for everyone. And that's why today we are taking a first step towards that goal by providing support to the municipalities who are currently experiencing liquidity problems. Today, I'm announcing that we will grant $2.2 billion to municipalities in the coming weeks through the federal Gas Tax Fund. Normally, the municipalities receive those payments twice in the year. But this is money they need now to be able to continue to provide essential services. So there will be a single payment for 2021 that will be provided now. Minister McKenna has already sent letters to her counterparts in the province and territories to explain this accelerated process. But this is what is important to remember. We are making this investment to allow the municipalities to continue to ensure the safety of Canadians. We are supporting services that will help businesses to reopen and people to go back to work. We are also looking at other ways of supporting the vital work that the cities and municipalities are doing across the country. Of course, there is still much to do so that we can start up our regular activities, so that businesses reopen their doors, and so that people can return to work. But I know that together we will make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll go to the phone for some questions. One question, one follow-up. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Raymond Filion, TVA. À vous.
Thank you. Good morning, Prime Minister. With respect to the demonstrations against racism, you say this is unacceptable, but what do you see as a potential solution to that challenge? Now, there was total havoc in Montreal, and things seem to be degenerating here. Well, I can tell you that for some time now, Canadians have realized that we have a lot of work to do to counter racism and to make sure that all families feel respected in this country. This is not just something for somewhere else, it's for here as well. And that's why for 5 years now our government has been investing a lot of money in various ways to help organizations, black community organizations, so that we've invested in Statistics Canada as well in order to collect more data and develop a truly Canadian strategy against racism. But we know there's more to be done, and we will continue to do more, hand in hand with the communities that are hard hit by discrimination and racism. We have an obligation to be the allies of those communities and all of those people and all Canadians. Now, with respect to the demonstrators, or rather, with respect to the people who disrupted the demonstration and caused havoc, we condemn them. We need to protect the right of all Canadians to peacefully demonstrate in Canada, and it is absolutely essential that be the case in our country.
We need to do better in Canada. We need to continue to know that even though we have made strides forward in the fight against racism and discrimination, racism still exists in Canada. Anti-black racism, systemic discrimination, unconscious bias are lived realities every day for millions of Canadians. We need to stand beside them. We need to be allies. We need to work in our daily lives to counter discrimination, racism, and intolerance. As a government, we've made many investments over the past 5 years, whether it's on community programs run by racialized communities, whether it's on Statistics Canada doing a better job of collecting disaggregated data, whether it's investments in anti-black racism strategies or anti-racism strategies in general. But there is always more to do, and ultimately, we need to do it together as Canadians and be better allies. As for those who took advantage of these peaceful protests to do significant damage to communities and stores, as we saw in Montreal, we have to condemn those actions strongly. They do not represent the peaceful protesters who are standing up for very real issues in Canada. We need to continue to make sure that peaceful protest is always able to happen in Canada.
Follow up. With respect to the money for municipalities, this is not new money. It's just an early payment under the fund. But they are asking for at least $10 billion in order to fund direct services to the population that they have to deliver now. Will they get the money, or will they have to increase their property taxes in order to provide those services? We are advancing money that would have been given to them in any case 6 months from now. But we recognize there is a need now for them to have that money. And the fact is we need to do more, and we will do more. But in order to do more, we have to work with the provinces because the municipalities fall within their jurisdiction. We will be there to invest, but it has to be done while respecting their jurisdiction and working with the provinces across the country.
We know that this is just an initial measure that brings forward money that the cities were going to get 6 months from now anyway, but there is a need right now for liquidity, for support as they deal with this COVID crisis. But yes, we need to do more, and we will do more. But doing more needs to happen hand in hand with the provinces who have jurisdiction over the municipalities. But I can assure you, in my conversations with the premiers and in our conversations going forward, the federal government will be there to work with the provinces to support the towns and cities that we all live in.
Merci. Prochaine question. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Janice Dixon, The Globe and Mail. Line open.
Hi, Prime Minister. I'm wondering, when will your government mandate the collection of race-based data in connection to COVID-19 specifically and more broadly across Canadian society?
We invested millions of dollars over the past years so that Statistics Canada can do a better job of collecting disaggregated data. It is extremely important to be able to see the clearer details on who is most vulnerable, who is being affected by various things in society. So that's something that we know, and it's traditionally been something difficult to do, so we are moving forward on that. In regards to COVID-19 data, we've been working with the provinces from the beginning to try and get better granularity, better details around the data, whether it's as simple as age and gender or much more complex data. We need to pull that together, and a data strategy has been part of what we've been talking on with the provinces, because we need to be able to compare what's happening in one province to what's happening next, and making sure that we're all collecting data the same way and in as much detail as possible is going to be an important part of the path forward. Okay.
For a number of years now, we have been investing in data collection by Statistics Canada in order to better determine the differences and in order to better respond to the challenges a number of communities are facing. Now, with respect to COVID-19, for a number of weeks, we've also been working with the provinces so that we can develop a data collection strategy, so that we can better compare data from various regions of the country. With Canadians starting to travel, that will be important, but also more data on the communities that are more affected by COVID-19.
Yes, and on the G7 meeting, Donald Trump has said it will be postponed to the fall. Are you planning on attending, and do you support the U.S. proposal to expand the group to include Russia?
We have, we've always been working with the United States to coordinate when we can hold this important G7 meeting. It's really important to keep holding these meetings and making sure that we are coordinating internationally in this time of crisis. Russia was excluded from the G7 after it invaded Crimea a number of years ago, and its continued disrespect and flaunting of international rules and norms is why it remains outside of the G7 and will continue to remain out. It's important
to have opportunities to get together as countries and as world leaders to talk about the health care crisis and the economic crisis, and to work together. And we will continue to work with the Americans on the details of the G7 meeting. But Russia was excluded from the G7 because of its invasion of Ukraine, and Russia continues to completely flout international standards and norms. So it would not be acceptable for Russia to get back into the G7.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Benjamin Vacher, TFO. À vous.
Good morning, Prime Minister. With respect to the letters to the municipalities, you have said that you are giving them $2.2 billion, but the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has asked for $10 billion. So do you think that they will see that as being adequate? Well, we respect provincial jurisdiction as set out in our Constitution. We are working with the provinces to figure out the best way of helping the municipalities. But even though it doesn't fall within our jurisdiction, we have money to help the municipalities. We are now giving them that liquidity, and it won't be enough. There will be more needed, and we are waiting to hear from the municipalities, and we will be working with the provinces and hope that the provinces will be good partners with the municipalities and the federal government. Now, what about the request being made by the provinces? You say that this is just a first step. What form could the next types of support take? What are you looking at specifically? Well, we will be talking to the provinces about the best way to help the municipalities. We know very well that there are a number of municipalities are having major problems with transit. They need to add more buses and more cars because people have to keep a proper distance from others. And this is because of COVID-19, of course. So they're in a cash crunch right now, and that's why we're looking at this with the provinces, and we will all be working together on this.
One more question on the phone. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Jim Bronskill, the Canadian Press. Line open. Mr. Bronskill.
Good morning, Prime Minister. You've already touched on this, but a month ago, municipalities said transit revenues had dropped drastically, draining their coffers. Basic services such as policing and garbage collection are at risk. Why is this taking so long to remedy?
We have been a great partner to municipalities as best as we could over the past years in various situations, in various crises, including through the gas tax transfer. We know how important our cities and towns are to the success of Canadians, to the success of our country's economy. That's why we are working with the provinces on figuring out ways that municipalities can be helped. We respect the Constitution that says that it is to provinces to manage and fund municipalities, but at the same time we've looked for ways where we can make direct contributions to the municipalities, including through the gas tax transfer. That is something that we've moved forward today, so we can give more money more quickly to the cities, but we need to do more, and on that we will continue to work with the provinces and encourage the provinces to step up in helping cities.
And a follow-up, Jim?
In Canada, the legacy of racism against Indigenous peoples weighs heavily, as you know. Now the pandemic has delayed federal responses to important recommendations in that area. Is there a danger that some of these federal responses will simply slip away given other pressures and priorities now?
No relationship is more important to my government than the one with Indigenous peoples. We have taken significant steps towards reconciliation over these past 5 years, but there is much more to do. We are working in partnership with Indigenous leadership, with Indigenous communities, with Indigenous peoples across this country. Right now, in this challenge around COVID, many of our partner organizations are very much focused on supporting their communities. We continue to work on the strategy to fight gender-based violence and respond to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry. But the work is affected because of COVID-19, but it remains a priority, not just for us, but for all Canadians, that we will continue to work on.
Good morning, sir. Ryan Tumbling, National Post. You've acknowledged this morning that the money you're giving to municipalities is effectively in advance. It falls well short of their needs. We're seeing cities cut transit service. We're seeing them lay people off. I'm wondering if you're concerned that going forward we're going to have less services in cities, especially for low-income people who need it to get to work at grocery stores and long-term care centers.
I'm very concerned about the funding level for cities, about the services that cities offer to people, to Canadians, the essential services, whether it's obviously police and fire, but also frontline community workers, daycare workers, community center assistants, health workers. There's a range of services offered by cities that are at danger of disappearing. That's why we are doing what we can unilaterally in advancing the money forward, but we need to work with the provinces on this. Cities are the responsibility of the provinces. The federal government will be there to work with the provinces, to support, to help flow money, but the provinces need to step up as well, and that's what we're discussing right now. Okay. nous savons qu'il y a une grande préoccupation.
We know that there's a major concern in terms of services for Canadians provided by municipalities and towns. And we're not just talking about fire services or police, but community services, childcare services, a presence on the ground. And often it's the towns and cities that are threatened without enough money. So we will do everything we can to ensure that we flow that money to them. We've advanced the payment now, but we have an obligation to work respectfully with the provinces, and we will do that. But we need the provinces to be there with us as well to help the municipalities.
You've invoked provincial jurisdiction several times this morning, and the answer, did provincial premiers on your call last Thursday object to the notion of you giving money directly to cities?
We have always respected the Constitution in this country. I think premiers and the federal government have always understood we can work together on lots of areas that cross jurisdictions, and we will always do that in a respectful way, working in partnership for the Canadians who, regardless of the order of government, we all collectively serve.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Louis Blouin, Radio-Canada.
Louis Blouin, Radio-Canada. You have talked about the work carried out by the provinces. Can you tell us where the blockage is? Is it the provinces that are dragging their feet? And can you be more specific? Do they not want you to be imposing conditions on them? But they've made that request a long time ago, over a month and a half ago. We're continuing to work with the provinces on this. There are a number of provinces that are dealing with various challenges associated with COVID-19, and there are different perspectives on the federal government intervening in their area of jurisdiction, but we are respectful of their responsibilities, and we understand that the federal government has a bit more fiscal latitude than the provinces, and thus we think it's important that we be there to provide support so that our economy can reopen safely in the cities and towns of this country. Now, with respect to the tensions in the United States, we're seeing that President Trump's comments have not eased people's anxiety, quite the opposite, since this began. Are you concerned that this will simply exacerbate the situation? And how should a world leader intervene or respond in a situation such as that? Well, I can't speak for other countries, but in Canada, we must come together. And whether we're talking about federal or municipal or provincial leaders, we have to be there to listen and understand that even though we have made progress in recent years and recent decades, there's still a lot that needs to be done. And we must be the allies of minority communities. So we will be there for them. That's my responsibility as the Prime Minister of the country, to ensure that we all can work together.
Minister Tom Perry with CBC. You're talking to Black Canadians today. You've apologized for this many times, but you did wear blackface as a younger man. Do you think that in any way diminishes your ability to provide moral leadership on this issue, or do you still think you're carrying that baggage?
I think we all have a role to play. We've all seen things in our lives or done things in our lives that we need to learn from and do significantly better from. I have spoken many times about how deeply I regret my actions that hurt many, many people. But at the same time, we need to focus on doing better every single day, regardless of what we did or hadn't done in our past. We need to work together through this. We need to keep standing up for each other. We need to be there to say that every day we can do better as a country, as a world. And I will be part of that. I will continue to be an ally to minority communities, to racialized communities across this country and around the world. Okay.
We have a duty to all try and make a positive contribution to the world. And I regret the choices I made a long time ago, and I have expressed a deep concern about that and apologized for it. But the fact is that every single day we have to act to ensure that things get better. That's what I'm doing, that's what our government is doing, and that's what all Canadians want to do to create a better world for their children and grandchildren.
Just so I'm clear, if Vladimir Putin is invited to this meeting, will you take part?
There are still many discussions to be had on what, where, how this meeting is going to go on. We look forward to opportunities to gather together with various world leaders. The G20 is a forum in which we regularly have exchanges across various countries that we don't necessarily have great relations with. But the G7 has always been a place for frank conversations amongst allies and friends who share so much, and that's certainly what I'm hoping to continue to see.
Brian Mullen, Global News. Prime Minister, a follow-up on collecting national data about how COVID-19 is impacting people along socio-demographic lines. Do you have an idea when this national data might be available, and explain how significant social determinants like race are on a person's vulnerability during this outbreak?
Well, I think to use a very clear example, on the closing in on 100,000 cases of COVID we've had in this country to date, we don't even have age data for a large portion of that. Certainly in the early days, collection of data was done in a very disparate way across the country, and collating all that data while people were trying to scramble to ramp up to respond to this crisis was extremely difficult. We need to do much better than that, and that's why we're working together with the provinces to establish a strategy on data collecting that will look at disaggregated data. We'll do a better way of bringing together data that can be compared and collated across jurisdictions, so we have a better picture of what's going on. These are things that we need to know, because we do know that COVID doesn't hit everyone the same way. Obviously, age ranges are real, but racialized communities are living this very differently than others. People who are already vulnerable for different reasons can become more vulnerable to COVID-19. That's why having accurate pictures of how people are being affected by this, and therefore how we can and should help them, is going to be really important for going forward. Depuis les tout débuts,
from the very beginning, public health agencies have been working very hard to try and respond to this crisis. And initially it was very difficult to get comprehensive data, because people were working very quickly to address the immediate situation. For example, there are tens of thousands of COVID cases in this country, and yet we are not aware of the ages of the people in many cases. And that is a data element that is very simple to collect. Now, for more complex data elements, we need to coordinate our efforts as levels of government, so that we can establish proper comparisons and see who is more affected. Minority communities that are already vulnerable are more affected by COVID-19. We know that anecdotally, but we need to have concrete data in order to better understand and provide better support.
CTV National News. Prime Minister, today you've talked about the potential of more financial help or other assistance for municipalities in addition to today's announcement. But I'm wondering, why not just bring forward some of those suggestions now? There are many mayors that are very preoccupied with the future of their fiscal situation. They're considering cutting essential services. Why not deliver them some certainty today with these other announcements you're teasing for later in the week or next week?
Because further announcements will require cooperation and partnership with the provinces who have jurisdiction over municipal funding. We need to work with the provinces on this, which is something we are doing and have been doing for a number of days now. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
All right, that is the Prime Minister of Canada.